Hello and welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma. This week we have Matt Newlands from Frontline Mental Health here to talk about everything from his time in the South Australian Police Force, being arrested and charged on duty, his mental health, his family, and what he's doing now with Frontline Mental Health, a company he's co-founded and is absolutely going gangbusters. Matt is a husband, father, and passionate mental health educator and counsellor. Following 10 years service as a frontline police officer for the South Australia Police, Matt endured significant mental distress, including personal experiences with suicide and a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress and depression. More importantly, Matt learnt firsthand the life-saving impacts of having good mates checking in and supporting him through his mental distress. Matt is a co-founder of Frontline Mental Health, providing customised mental health training and counselling services to military, first responder agencies, local government, and private organisations around Australia. Additionally, Matt holds a position on the South Australian Government Suicide Prevention Council, representing the first responder community, is a volunteer community ambassador for Are You OK? In 2022, Matt was awarded the Lived Experience Worker Award by the Mental Health Coalition of South Australia, and in 2024 was awarded the Suicide Prevention Australia State Life Award for the Priority Populations category. I absolutely loved having this open and honest conversation with Matt. He was so generous with his story, and I know you're going to love it too. So let's get into it. Welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma, the podcast that explores journeys of resilience and hope. I'm Rosie Skeen, a yoga and breathwork teacher and founder of Tactical Yoga Australia. As a former soldier's wife, mum to 3 beautiful kids, and a medically retired New South Wales police officer with PTSD, I understand the challenges of navigating mental health in the first responder and veteran community. Join us for incredible stories from individuals who've confronted the depths of mental illness and discovered their path to happiness and purpose, as well as solo episodes and expert discussions. Together, we'll uncover the tools to help you navigate your journey toward a brighter, more fulfilling life. Whether you're looking for helpful insights, practical tips, or just a friendly reminder that you're not alone, Triumph Beyond Trauma has got your back. You matter, and your journey to a happier, more meaningful life starts right here. Welcome to the podcast, Matt. Thanks so much for coming.
Welcome to be here, Rosie. Thanks for the invitation.
I love to know people's backstories about, where they grew up and what drove them to join the service that they joined. So would you like to tell us a little bit about yours?
Yeah, sure. So I was actually born north of Adelaide, but I grew up down south, down at Aldinga Beach. Moved down here when I was about 5 years old. Grew up down here with parents and 2 brothers. Mum and dad separated when I was, I think, about high school, and stayed with mum. Dad moved away. But I think as far as like wanting to join the cops, when I was 4 years old and still out north, my dad's mate, who was in the police, and he came to my 4th birthday with the police car, and we had a little party from what I can see in the photos anyway. And there's one particular picture that I sort of hung on to, which is Simon holding me next to the police car, and he's in uniform, so he was clearly on shift. And apparently, I don't remember obviously because I was only 4, but apparently that was the first time I said that I wanted to be a police officer when I'm older, and that kind of stuck. So all through, I guess, the young years, it's pretty common. It's pretty common, but as I got to high school, then I started to get pretty serious about it. Contacted police recruiting. I think about year 10 was the first sort of contact I'd had with them, just to make sure that things were sort of planned out the way that I wanted, and joined the police when I was 20 years old.
So did you structure your high school subjects around being able to join the police?
Yeah, I did. I say that loosely because,
Yes.
joining the cops and
Yeah, exactly.
not becoming an astronaut, you you don't need to get too carried away. But I was just mindful of what subjects and things might look okay. And there was nothing that was sort of too surprising. And the grades, you're not having to get A+ on stuff. And that's not to diminish the intellect of police officers, but, they're looking for, I guess, more of the practical application, the life skill stuff, as opposed to the high level intellect for general duties and things.
So how old were you when you joined? Did you say 20?
I was 20. Yeah, I moved to New South Wales. I moved to Foster Tuncurry when I finished high school. I was up there for about 18 months, worked in the hospitality industry, and then came back. And that was, I guess, a bit of an attempt to get some of that life experience. It was suggested that joining the police straight out of school, probably not the best approach. So yeah, when I worked hospitality, it gave me a little bit of an exposure just to working with people and I guess even just seeing people under the influence of alcohol and drugs and a little bit of an exposure to that. And then when I came back to Adelaide, I worked for a secondhand dealer actually, which was was interesting. And again, the intention there was I couldn't necessarily afford to get my security license, and so this one particular organization was known for, I guess, crooks coming through and selling their stolen goods and stuff. So I thought it might give me an opportunity to start working with, I guess, a demographic in the community that I hadn't previously been exposed to. So I did that for a little bit and joined the police academy March of 2006.
How was the academy for you?
I loved it. So obviously I wanted to be a police officer for all of my time up until then, um, and didn't miss a day. I actually injured my knee nearing the end of my time at the police academy, just doing one of the training exercises, and even still, yeah, managed to still show up each day and just caught up on some of the physical activity, physical assessments that I needed to get done. So just caught up on those during lunch breaks and things. But yeah, didn't miss a day at the academy. Loved it, made some good friends, still friends today. Um, yeah, and it was about 9 months, I think, in the end, just shy of 9 months at the academy. But it's not the same, obviously. It's but look, you got to start somewhere, don't you?
Yeah, it is. And I still have friends from the academy too. I think everyone, makes those couple of good friends that you keep for life. Yeah, it's such a good time. It's such a fun time too, where you're still learning and haven't put it quite into practice yet.
Yeah.
So from the academy, which I assume is it in Adelaide?
Yeah. So it's close to the beach in Adelaide. So Taparoo, Fort Largs. When I went through, it was still the older academy. They actually built a new one next door some years later, and I think sold off a good part of the land that the old one was on, just a housing, usual development. So just in the city. And then once I graduated, I went to a metropolitan police station just south of Adelaide, Sturt Police Station. I was there for about 6 months. I worked with a couple of really good field tutors. They were, yeah, switched on, engaged, keen to show me how to, I guess, how to do this job, and different styles, obviously, which is the good part about joining a good team is you get different types of policing style exposure. But I think I was, yeah, really fortunate to have some really good mentors.
Makes a difference, doesn't it? Especially in those early days where you can sort of pick and choose little things that you like off your mentors, and then sort of apply it to your own policing practice. So you're in Sturt Police Station.
Stir Police Station for about 6 months. There was a requirement for two of our course to go to a country location, Port Augusta, which is about roughly 3 hours north of Adelaide. They were looking for people to nominate. Which is usually the case at the academy. They try to see if anybody wants to go up there. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I think everyone sort of signs that bit of paper that says you'll go anywhere the commissioner directs. And in South Australia at the time, they only really had one chance to sort of send you somewhere, and straight from the academy is that spot. So yeah, they put the call out. No one necessarily wanted to go there. There was a few people that said, gave reasons why maybe they couldn't or shouldn't. In my mind, I was like, well, I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. So if it's me, it's me. And it was. So it was, yeah, me and another um, got our request or direction to head up to Port Augusta, and I did 2 years up there.
Yeah. It's not a terrible spot either. What a
No, no,
right over there.
yeah, I enjoyed the place. I've never really been there it's probably got its pros and cons depending
Yeah.
on, I guess, who you asked. But I went in there as, well, obviously as a police officer, and just went straight into the policing community. And yeah, and as I guess many experience in these service roles is that community is really tight. You rock up on day one, and you're welcome straight into the fold, and you kind of get given a bit of the tour of the town and places that you should go and the places that you shouldn't go, and where people drink and eat food and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it was really good, really like good social connection in the town with amongst the service members. So yeah, I enjoyed my 2 years. I always knew that I wasn't going to stay there. I was always going to come back metropolitan because I had no real connection to the town. But I think it was really good platform to learn certainly communication styles in policing and the importance of that. So yeah, I'd say country policing. It's not as country as it sounds, but yeah, it is, I think, a pretty useful tool for most to start with.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's different demographics, isn't there? Like even though it's quite a populated area, but it is
Mm.
different to working in a city environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know that you quite openly have been diagnosed with
Mhm.
PTSD.
Mhm.
Did you want to talk about how that sort of came about for you and when you started to notice that things weren't quite right?
Yeah. Yeah, it took a while for me to realize actually, which I think is also pretty commonplace, but,
Absolutely.
um, I guess I had recognized that policing was the most important thing in my life at the time. I probably recognized that on reflection though. There's kind of an acceptance, the nature of the role, the demands of it, the sacrifices that you kind of have to make. The challenge that comes with that is, and this is something I'll talk about now in the works that I do with service members, is so much of my identity then became being a police officer. So when you, I guess, stuck so much in this role identity of I am a police officer, as opposed to it's something that I do for work, and it's not as clear cut as that, but it can become quite a risky place to be when things aren't going so well. So I did a good portion of my career thinking that I was in a good way, and I believe that I was. There was a couple of instances which I think just accumulate and contribute to poor mental health over time, and those jobs are always going to come up. But I just didn't necessarily have any mental health literacy, I think, to recognize maybe the severity or the impact that they were, and therefore didn't necessarily put any strategies in place to cope with those. I had in 2013 a suicide loss of a friend and colleague. He was off duty at the time. There was a few of us that were on duty. So I usually talk about this particular incident or this job that I went to because that's what my psychologist tells me was a contributing factor to the diagnosis. But there's also the part of me that recognizes, yes, that was a very significant event, had a really profound impact on me and my health. But there's also all the other accumulation of stuff as well. In 2013, this particular incident had occurred, and I really struggled with it. I didn't necessarily want to acknowledge that I was really struggling because there was this feeling like my team or the people around me were impacted more so that they were closer to him, they were better friends. And it wasn't really my place to really be stepping in to say, hey, this has impacted me as well. And that was, nobody necessarily gave me any reason to think that. It was very much a self perception. But I think, again, quite common for service members to be forever putting other people before themselves. So over the course of probably about sort of 18 months, just shy of from September 13 to the beginning of January, or yeah, middle January 2015, my mental health started to decline pretty significantly. And I wasn't really tracking the downward spiral. I was losing sleep a lot through the night. I was probably operating about 2 to 3 hours of broken sleep a night. I was relying quite heavily on alcohol to get to sleep, and then relying quite heavily on caffeine to stay awake through the day, and just riding that common roller coaster of looking for legal substances to operate on. So,
Yeah.
and then also just, I guess, living on the physiological responses of policing. There's something to be said about all those chemical changes that occur when you're in times of, anger, fear, frustration, all that type of stuff, and using that as adrenaline to get through the day. And I still really enjoyed policing, but had recognized, I think, on also on reflection, I was starting to disconnect from the meaning and purpose of what it was that I was doing and why I was doing it. It felt very much like I don't know, I guess, a bit of like a merry-go-round of today's victim is tomorrow's offender and vice versa. And it seems like we're at the same houses doing the same thing. And yeah, questioning the impact. I think a lot of people that join service roles, this is just my experience, are looking to try to influence or impact their community in a positive way. And I think I just lost sight of that. Didn't really feel like we were doing anything that was worthwhile. So by the beginning of 2015, there was starting to be more of those like physical or external signs that were showing up in my life. I was recognized I was having what felt like unreasonable emotional responses to circumstances outside of me, and it just didn't really make sense. Found myself on one particular occasion, I broke down in tears over something that was relatively minor, and So this is like definitely out of character and something not quite right here. But I was also saw that I was emotionally numb most of the time, and which is a really useful tool when I was at work, highly effective for a good police officer to not have any emotions. It stops you from, leaning into any of the grief or a fear or anger that might show up when at these really challenging tasks. But at home, not conducive to having social or, intimate relationships with like family and friends. So my daughter was 4 at the time. There was the one particular incident that I often mentioned that I recall where she said that she was scared of me, and she went to my wife, and I think that the challenge with it was I was never like loud or physically, abusive at home, but more so one of the things that I like to talk to service members about is this conditioned physical behaviors that we're quite become quite good at. There's a way in which we can hold ourselves and the way in which we can talk and a tone of voice and instruction that people are well aware that there's a consequence if they don't comply with the direction they're being given. And it doesn't have to contain any threats of violence. It's just the physical presence. And I imagine that that's just what Grace saw in me at the time was, I was policing at home and had just become this robotic consequence is how I was describing myself. Yeah. And that was a red flag that sent me to the doctor. The doctor referred me to a psychologist. He diagnosed me with severe to extreme post-traumatic stress and depression. And I told him that wasn't true. So I was like, because I'm a senior constable of police, so I would know better than the
Yeah.
psychologist. Foolish. So I refused the diagnosis, and just really on the grounds that, hey, like the way I saw it, I'd never been in the military, I'd never been deployed to war, so that felt like it wasn't mine to go near. I didn't want to diminish what that diagnosis meant for a lot of people. And when he said depression, I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, I don't feel anything." So
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
my my idea of depression was, I don't know, this stereotypical laying in bed, crying uncontrollably and not being able to do anything. And I know for some people or a lot of people, that's a very real display of depression. But for me, that wasn't the case. So yeah, I kept it secret. I thought I can't tell anybody this because what's it going to do to my police career? I'd just been moved into a new position. I'll say promoted. It wasn't a rank promotion, but for me and my perception of the unit that I went to, it was a highly sought after area, and I was fortunate to be selected for a role there and work with some really good police officers that were, again, in my opinion, were at the top of their game, and a lot of them still friends with now. So, and I hold them in really high regard. So I was fortunate to be put into that position, and um, felt that there was something to prove. I needed to make sure that I sort of fit the mold of what was expected there. And I was also scared of what would happen to my career if I said, "Hey, I've got this little diagnosis thing now," which I think historically, and there's still evidence to say it happens now, is can often just sideline people and either find themselves on a desk or even worse, being sort of pushed out the door. So I wasn't prepared for that to happen. I was 31 years old. I mapped out my whole policing career. I was going to be there forever until I retired. So yeah, I wasn't going to run the risk of putting this on a table and thought that if I just ignore it, it'll go away. So, pretty dumb. I've just reconciled the fact that I wasn't well at the time and making some foolish decisions. And that was one of them.
Yeah. I totally. The reason that you sought, to see someone is exactly the same reason that I did with my children, because I was completely overreacting. And what you say about having that presence, policing your family, like works great in the street, but
Yeah,
definitely not conducive to a happy home, like at all. And
no,
my
absolutely.
kids, yeah, my kids are about the same age as your daughter. I had a 4 or 6 year old, and I think, yeah, my daughter was like about 3 months old. So she was fine. She wasn't getting in trouble. But with the boys, I was
Yeah.
like, what is going on? Like,
Mm,
these poor kids just, spilt some milk or something, just ridiculous.
yeah.
And the reaction was just too much. I was like, okay, this is not, we're not doing good things here.
Yeah, it's not healthy, and it's hard to notice because I think, well, in my case, because we spend so much time at work, and that there's this like validation when at work that this behavior is effective and it's getting results. And then it's countered by maybe the handful of incidences that happen at home where it's not so effective. And it's hard then to get that external validation of, is this working or is this not? This feedback, probably a better word than validation. So it's just this constant, I found it constantly confusing, but trying to understand the left and right of arc of, well, am I on here? But
Yeah.
I don't, the problem with this is a conversation I can have now in reflection, because at the time was just in it and blinkers on, and didn't necessarily pick up where I had stopped trying to separate myself from, the way I operated at work to the way I operated at home. And I actually remember early in my career for some years, if I would speak to my wife Alira on the phone, she would often be able to tell if I was either at the station versus maybe out on the street talking to people, and just in the tone of my voice, just on the phone. So I think that there's a real strength in relying on people around us to give us that feedback, and people are sometimes not too sure how to do that, and that's fair enough. But it's a blurry line usually after a few years in service, and the priorities shift. So there's all sorts of contributing factors, which it could be a really long podcast if we started to
I was
explore
going
them
to
all. So
say, I could talk about this all day, but
yeah,
the thing I did like, two things with that, with our children, is because we see, you know, the worst of the worst on the street, we don't want our children to be like that as well. So I think, especially as police officers, and I know I've spoke to my psychologist about this, we seem to go that little bit over the top. But then when we have our, mental health as well is not doing so well, it just adds another layer. And our poor children, unfortunately, are the ones that sort of cop it a fair bit. And the other
yeah,
thing I wanted to say in response to, relying on the people around us, is that we're not very good sometimes at taking that feedback, like, hey, maybe that was a bit over the top. I know that I personally would not have taken that very well when I was, deep in the depths of my PTSD just before diagnosis, especially, to say, what are you talking about? Like, is
Mhm.
this what everyone does?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so
Or
yeah,
go
it is
or
that
push
fine
back
line.
even more. Yeah, and say like, hey, don't tell me what to do. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's
absolutely.
it's so hard. I've spoken to a few people that I was around when I was like really unwell through the beginning of 2015 through to like the end of 2015 when I got out of the police. But a few people have said, I remember seeing you at the station. I was in the cells on one particular occasion, and one of my mates was after the fact, probably about, I don't know, 12 months, 18 months, we were in a conversation. And he said, do you remember that arrest that you brought in when you came into this particular area? And so, yeah. And he goes, I could tell something was wrong because you were just different. He goes, and I just didn't know how to say anything. And I don't hold any judgment or, any ill will towards anybody during that time. Because how do you? Like, it's easy for us now in the cheap seats to go, oh yeah, you should have told me.
Yeah.
Like, really? Like, how do you tell someone? How do you have those conversations if you're not in like a real deep connection with them, and that good friendship where they're in a position to recognize and take that feedback? It's such a difficult, delicate process that there's a lot of people, I think, that sit on the sidelines that so desperately want to help, and they just don't want to stuff it up either. So it sounds much easier than what it actually is to do. So yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, it is hard, especially like you said, when you're not in a close relationship, friendship with a
Mm.
person to sort of bring it up. Big shout out to Tactical Yoga Australia, empowering first responders and veterans on their journey to enhance mental wellness through the transformative practices of breathwork, yoga, and mindfulness. Our mission is to guide individuals from burnout and anxiety to a state of calm, well-rested happiness. Life can often feel like a challenging roller coaster, and we're here to help you navigate those ups and downs. Our commitment is to assist you in achieving self-regulation and consistent positive progress toward mental wellness. For additional valuable resources and ongoing inspiration, visit tacticalyogaaustralia.com. Now, back to the podcast. So from there, when did you finally accept that you did have PTSD and depression, and what happened?
Yeah. When did I accept it? I think I didn't actually accept it until probably January of 2016. So in August, it was end of July 2015. At work. Was involved in an incident where I had come into lawful possession of a baseball bat. I ended up making quite a foolish decision to keep it. And one of the guys on the team went to anti-corruption branch and flagged their concerns. So on the 7th of August, 2015, I was arrested by anti-corruption branch at work for aggravated theft of the baseball bat. And that also triggered, my immediate suspension. So that was the last day that I was at work. I think even then, I was really struggling with suicidality. I'd had a couple of one particular incident previous to the arrest where I had made the decision that I would take my life and that everybody would be better off because of it. But the other time that I just need to get out of this environment so that I can end the harm that I'm causing for everybody around me. And it was only for the influence of some really important people at the time and some really meaningful conversations that kept me alive during that really difficult period. So a couple of good friends, my wife, I've got two brothers and my mum and my dad. And there's a number of like really important relationships that helped keep me alive through 2015. And it actually got to I think it was about New Year's Eve. And I remember I was outside. We had some family coming over for New Year's Eve celebrations. The court stuff was all still pending. I was still on bail. I still had all these conditions that I wasn't allowed to talk to pretty much most of the people that I was close to in the police. And I remember I was constantly getting caught in loops in my brain of things would escalate. I'd planned that particular day. For some reason, I'd got it in my head that I was getting arrested again, that the police were going to come. And I recognized that I had put stuff by the front door that when the police arrived, I had thought through the process of making sure that they would shoot me on the front lawn. And it was what actually broke that cycle. My daughter, as I said, was quite young and I was off work because through that school holiday, it was that transition from kindy to reception. And I was off work looking after my daughter, which was one of the highlights of being off work this was the first time I'd really been able to spend some time getting to know her. And I was actually quite scared of it to start with, because I was scared of myself. But it was an opportunity for Grace and I to become a lot closer. But she had just came outside and asked me for some food. She wanted the lunch, and it was enough for me to go like, I can't keep doing this. So I wrote a letter, which I still got it. And the letter starts with like, this is not a suicide letter, because I was like, I can't do this. I don't want to die. And in my experience, most people who have had thoughts of suicide, and they're common. And so I like to normalize the conversation around suicide, but most people don't want to die. They just don't know what else to do. It's an overwhelm. It's looking for options. The brain's looking for options. And at a time where we feel like we're stuck and we've got nothing left or nowhere else to turn, it feels like a sound option. And then that scares a lot of people, and that's okay. But yeah, just try to normalize some of that. So I wrote this letter, and then I read the letter because I couldn't actually have the conversation with my family. I read the letter to my dad and my mum, and my brothers and those key, really important relationships. I was like, I have to do something different here. And I think that was probably, if, coming back, a long way to your question of when I accepted the diagnosis, I think it's fair to say that was probably the first time that I said, like, you know what, like I accept that I'm not well and my brain's not serving me the way that I want it to. But I'm going to look for ways of trying to change that, and started this process of if my environment had impacted my ways of thinking and feeling and behaving over a period of time so much, is it possible for, if I alter the environment and I alter the input, that maybe I could program it a different way? And it's not to, delete the hard drive of all the stuff from before, but it was really around understanding what my brain was trying to do and how it was, ultimately all of the things that were showing up were protective measures for me. And, I have a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress. I don't think that label really means much to me, other than, helps me understand maybe why some things happen or the way that I think and feel at times. But then it also means like some of those things are actually quite useful. So I'm very careful around saying that it's like that a diagnosis of those things is a bad thing. They are what they are. And, everybody is impacted differently. And that's always the question for me is, do these things, these behaviors, these thoughts impact you, and how so? Because sometimes they're useful. I haven't quite worked out the value and the use of the nightmares yet, but I don't know that, not everything has to have a silver lining either. So, Yeah. So I just, that was an acceptance, I think. And then I was like, I'm going to just try to do things different and alter the trajectory of where my life was taking me.
I can't even imagine how difficult that would have been to come in front of your family and read a letter like that to say
Mm,
and, like, hold your hand up and say, "Yeah, okay, things aren't going well for me and I need some help." Like,
mm,
yeah,
yeah.
that would have
I think it's, I think that because there's so many things that are at play, and this is some of the big challenges is, you know, service personnel want to be of service, and rarely are they going to be the ones that are going to be the recipient of service, regardless of the benefit that it might bring. And it's nothing to do with ego. It's not them saying, "Oh, I'm bigger, stronger, better." I think it's genuinely this not wanting to feel as though we're a burden on others. The counselling work that I do, conversation comes up all the time. I speak to first responders around the country that they are more comfortable having conversations and thoughts around taking their life than they are around saying that they're going to call in sick, because they are so worried about the impact that it's going to have on their colleagues to leave them short staffed or short with resources, that they would rather continue to step into the arena and continue to shoulder the burden of the mental fatigue and cognitive challenges that they're having, than to maybe take some time away and get themselves well so that they can come back. And naturally the conversations then go, well, if that's a fear for you, or that's a big concern for you, like, well, what's the outcome? Like, let's talk this through. You might be available then for this shift, but what happens when when you do, like, properly just have to not come in anymore? You're no longer, or someone stands you down, a boss says, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're not, up to operational standard." Then what happens? Then when you're forced into this position, or worse still, you get to a position where you do take your life. I hope so. And it's not about guilt. It's about just trying to sit with those difficult conversations and talk through the possible outcomes. I think that from my point of view, I'm really pro first responder agencies. We need good people to do this really difficult and challenging job, and I would never talk anybody out of doing it. I get keen for conversations when young people say they want to get in. I think that there's a long way we've got to come, and there's still a lot of work for us to do to help better prepare those that are in first responder space and the military, to be ready for the challenges and the resources that are required before they become unwell. I think that we really need to, a lot of the core focus now of my company is around trying to educate. Educate's the best form of education's the best form of prevention. And we say it's the antidote to stigma. Stigma is just an uncertainty or a fear around, this thing. What does it do to our careers? And why don't we just start having those open and transparent conversations? And then I also recognize that there's an accountability measure on organizations to view these things differently. We hear good stories, but we still hear really difficult and challenging stories. And yeah, I'll never diminish the fact that there's still a lot of people out there that are putting their hand up and saying that they're struggling and they're not getting the support that they need, or maybe they are being sort of shown the door in different ways. That's not helpful. It's not useful. And it's a massive contributing factor to the recruitment and retention issues we've got around the country.
absolutely, there is massive issues with retention, especially I really yeah, I completely agree, and something that I am very passionate about is having good people doing these jobs because that's what we need. Like, we need the people that wanna help, and wanna get into these roles, but we also need to support them in that, and not only physically, but mentally, and letting them know that, these are risk factors to joining these occupations, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's not being done enough. And I think this is a beautiful segue into what you're doing now with
Yeah.
your business, your company, and who you're working for. So do you wanna talk about that now? Because I just think it's
Yeah.
such important work and absolutely one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on because I think it's great what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's find myself in this position now. And in fact, my wife said to me some time ago now, do you think you do what you do now because of what happened? Or was it necessary for you to go through that so that you can do what we do now?
Yes.
And I think that's a combination of both of those things. I'm very in a very fortunate position to have had good people around me that helped keep me alive during a time that I was really unwell, and also good people around me that encouraged me to, I guess, really sit with what I had experienced and gone through, and recognize that lots of other people were going through similar stuff. So the first couple of years out of the police, I got really focused on getting myself well. I was doing other jobs in business development and things because, mortgages and they're important. But in 2018, I got involved in a course that was led by Dr. John Lane, who's a lieutenant colonel. He's a psychiatrist that had developed a program specifically for military and first responders around, I guess, functional skills, day-to-day stuff that can tackle the way that we're showing up each day, which was then seeing symptom reduction in post-traumatic stress and depression and anger and suicidality and all this type of stuff. So I got involved in that program as a participant, met John, and that was my first exposure to this idea of working with military and first responders in a supportive way around mental health in particular, and prompted a lot of these conversations then around education. So worked in that space for a few years. I just kept saying yes to opportunities. I got involved with RUOK in 2019 as an ambassador, and I've continued to I volunteer with them and love my role with them. I'm involved in their Are They Triple OK campaign, and have done a number of other things in the mental health space, qualified myself as a counsellor. And in 2013, so the beginning of last year, was sort of prompted due to some, I guess, work challenges an organisation I was working with, prompted to consider what full-time self-employment looked like. I was doing like lots of things on the side anyway. I only ever really worked part-time jobs so that I could keep sort of just doing the work on the side. So this is an opportunity for me and a good friend to start a company and see if there's appetite for the work that we were wanting to put out into the community. And turns out there was. We picked up a reasonably good contract with the military first, around the country, and that was really useful, and it gave us an opportunity to recognize that if we approach mental health as education and we do it in a customized and authentic way that is built on personal lived experiences. And I know there might be a few listeners that cringe when they hear those words because it's becoming overused, but the way that we view lived experience is it's a strengths focused. It is not the fact that someone has gone through something necessarily. It's the fact that someone has gone through something and they've spent the time to learn from what it is that was effective and what worked, and not just necessarily all just the traditional stuff of going to the doctor and seeking professional help. Those things are really important. But what are all those other things? What are those day-to-day things that help, focusing on things like sleep, hygiene, diet, exercise, social connection, finding meaning and purpose in life outside of those service roles, looking at those other roles as well. And by having this customized and relatable way of providing, I guess, education and facilitating conversations so that we can hold space for those difficult conversations and the hard questions that people have, that there seems to be a real interest in that. And the company started with this one particular project. And after, like I said, some other challenges, we went, let's make this a thing. So yeah, Frontline Mental Health was born in January of 23, and our first program was delivered in April of 23. We're, I guess now almost April of 2024, as we approach our sort of first birthday of programs. And we've expanded, not just military, we've worked with first responder agencies. We worked with local government, with private organizations. It turns out that there's lots of people in the community that are, just navigating really difficult work environment, but also really difficult personal environments. And a lot of the conversations we're having are translational across different sectors. So, we work around the country. The team has grown. We are really proud of a relationship that we have with the Aussie Frontline community, with Marley and Dan. Marley started Aussie Front a couple of years ago, and Marley was one of those mates through 2015 that helped keep me alive, and was also one of my biggest supporters to get into the mental health space. And the work that Aussie Frontline do around reducing stigma and raising awareness, the importance of social connection. They sponsor counselling sessions that are external from organisations. And we have a really strong relationship with Aussie Frontline, myself and my business partner, Narelle, who's also former police and former Air Force. Um, she's also a registered counsellor too. We've now got a counselling pool of people that is growing around the country. And we, use our experiences to support military and first responders in that space. And at the moment, it just seems to be going from strength to strength, and that's a reflection of the community that we work with. All of our relationships are that. They're not one, like, we don't align ourselves with organizations that are looking for tick box exercises to train staff. We're not interested. If you want to work with frontline mental health, you have to be in it for the right reasons and building strong partnerships. We're here to support people and teams over a period of time, not just that. Like I said, that once I'll come in and, deliver a half-day workshop, we do all sorts. And we're also responsive to community needs. A lot of the clientele that we have now, a lot of the people and the partnerships we have, their people are telling us the challenges that they're facing. And if we have the skill set, we will develop something that is useful as an education piece, and we roll that out. So that's, I think, a different approach. There's many organizations out there that are doing the off the shelf program, one size fits all. And we know that just doesn't work. So, we're really focused on the way that we do things. It's always people first. As cliche as that sounds, we're constantly assessing who is the person that we're trying to influence here and who is the end user. We have to make sure that people are getting value from, if they're going to give us some of their time, if they're going to pay us money to come in and do some stuff, that everyone is going to get value from it. And most importantly, we're looking for impact on the people in the rooms that we're talking to. So yes, we've got a range of programs that we deliver. We still have the customized approach if people want that. And we've now just developed a 8-week stress resilience and functioning course, still with Lieutenant Colonel John Lane. He's done, co-developed. He's done the heavy lift. He's the brains behind it. We apply the legwork and train people in that course. And so that's just now starting to roll out through April. And there's already been some significant interest in that program around the country. That's probably a really long answer to a short question, but there's lots of stuff that we're doing.
Which is amazing. And I'm sure that has given you, a bit of passion and a lot of purpose, and helps you on your own, mental health journey to be able to get out there and help other people and, reduce the stigma, open up conversations that people might not otherwise have had, and give them the opportunity maybe to talk to someone when they haven't been quite sure, if, what they're
Mm.
thinking about is a real thing, or if, they're just, how it is. Are you making
Yep.
this up in your head? And I just think it's so important and just amazing that you're able to go into people's workplaces and deliver those programs.
Mm.
I'm sure they're really well received.
Yeah, so far they've been really good. And I think that they're the wins for us. We can drive really far, fly, spend lots of time traveling, and sometimes, the fatigue, the family, like obviously my wife and my daughter, they give up a lot still for me to do this work. My wife, certainly holds the fort. She works full time as well as look after, Grace is now 13. So they give a lot to allow me to go out and to do this work. But, some of those conversations, the ones that drive me and the team, are the ones where we're giving people permission. It's the conversation after we've done a training session or during a lunch break, because we like to sit with the guys and girls and talk to them about, stuff maybe even outside of the training. And some of those conversations then where someone's maybe reached out and, booked a counseling session, or they've just had that informal conversation before we've left as we're getting in the car. And like, that's the stuff, that's the power, that's the messages that, and Marley and Dan get it from Aussie Frontline as well, the work that they've done. We're not anything special. There's lots of us, like Rosie, you and your podcast and the work that you're doing. I know programs that you're developing too. You're drawn to it because you know that it works for you, and the community are looking for things that will work for others. And we're now starting to seeing a shift where people are now seeking out some of these conversations as a way of making sure they stay on top of their game. And I think that's such an important shift that I'm really excited for, where we are leaning into the prevention space now. People aren't waiting until they're unwell. They're like, what can I do? What information can you have? And And when we think about counseling, I have had sessions where people have just said, I don't know that there's necessarily anything wrong. I just would like some information. And it's been an hour one-on-one information session. Is that counseling? I don't know. Maybe we're going to, co-opt that word and steer it away from it feeling like it's I'm not well and so I need counseling. Rather, this is an opportunity for information sharing. Because if we can get young or sort of junior first responders, military members, early in that stage of their career, understanding what the job might look like. And that's not just for first responders, that's just people in general. Our vision for frontline mental health is really around making sure that mental health will be viewed as a priority. People will see their mental health as a priority. That's how our vision starts. And I might not necessarily see it in my time, but hopefully, that I'm here for a long time. And I can, and frontline can do its part to really help shape that reframe where everybody of all walks of life see their mental health as a priority and they can get the most out of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're definitely well on your way to achieving that. And it's through organizations like yours, and others that are doing this work in this space that the change will happen. It might be slow, but I'm very positive that it will happen. And people taking a more of like a policing term, like a proactive approach instead of a reactive approach to their mental health. Like how beautiful is that people are
Yeah.
coming in and just wanting to get information about it. Like such a good thing. And
Yeah.
then being able to share that with people that they know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's that ripple effect, isn't it? The more
Yeah,
people we have
100%.
talking about it, we normalize the conversations and more people will feel okay and comfortable to seek help.
Absolutely. So where can people find you, Matt?
In a few different places. LinkedIn is a spot you'll find me. I am on Instagram, and you can also head to www.frontlinemh.com.au, get a bit of a rundown of the different services we offer. And there's sort of contact functions there. And I'll also plug Aussie Frontline too. Head to Instagram. There's an awesome community, Aussie Frontline. They've got a website as well. There's a couple of courses on there, online courses you can take, but their apparel range is a low-key way of representing who you are in the community. So
Perfect.
understand.
I'll put all those links in the show notes as well so people can find it very easily.
Cool. Perfect. Thanks, Rosie.
Thank you so much for your conversation today, Matt. I know that it's going to be so helpful to a lot of people and, just talking about your growth after being diagnosed, it's not a life sentence. It's something that you can learn from and work out how you need to, go through the rest of your life and function optimally. So thank you so much for joining me. I've really appreciated having you here.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any new ones. We release fresh content every Tuesday. And while you're there, take a moment to leave us a review. I would genuinely appreciate your thoughts. Don't forget to connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Tactical Yoga Australia and share this episode with your friends, family and workmates to spread inspiration. Your support means the world. My name is Rosie Skeen. Join me again next week for another empowering and positive episode of Triumph Beyond Trauma. Until then, be kind to your mind and trust in the magic of your consistent and positive efforts. Triumph beyond your trauma is closer than you think. Have the best week.